Imagine you're 10 years old, right? You've got your backpack, your running shoes, and you're just wandering through some, like, mildly intimidating tall grass.
As you do.
Right, as you do. And you throw this mass-produced plastic sphere, it shakes 3 times and clicks. And congratulations, you have just captured the literal omnipotent god of the universe.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd when you frame it like that.
It is, because the architect of space, time, and, like, dimensional reality is now just sitting in your pocket. Right next to a half-eaten sandwich, a bicycle you somehow folded in half, and a rat you caught yesterday.
Which is, I mean, it's the ultimate cognitive dissonance of the franchise, honestly.
Exactly. It's an insane, fundamentally broken reality when you actually step back and look at it.
Because we are so conditioned to treat this world like a biological safari, right? Just a fun little ecological cataloging exercise.
Yeah, gonna catch them all and all that.
Right. But beneath that surface of catching and battling, there is a cosmological framework that, honestly, rivals some of the most complex mythologies in human history.
I completely agree, and I am so incredibly thrilled to welcome you to this deep dive. The mission today for you listening is to map out the ultimate family tree.
And we aren't just looking at basic biology here.
No, not at all. We are looking specifically at the cosmological, ecological, and mythological genealogy of legendary and mythical Pokémon. We took this massive stack of lore, fan translations, in-game library texts, and Pokédex entries to uncover how the Pokémon universe was literally built from scratch.
Because if you think this is just about, cute creatures hiding in the bushes waiting to be your friend, you are vastly underestimating a creation myth that involves literal deities.
Literal deities, yeah. And dimensions composed entirely of antimatter and the tectonic shaping of continents.
We're looking at a system of self-regulating cosmic architecture. The genealogy we are tracing today is less about genetic inheritance and more about the delegation of universal physics and planetary ecology.
It is a massive undertaking. But before we jump into the void of space and time to trace this tree back to its absolute root, I want to ask you listening to please drop a like and subscribe to the channel.
It really makes a huge difference for us.
It does. It really helps out the deep dive. And trust me, we've got a truly mind-bending journey ahead of us today. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Where do we even start?
Well, if we want to trace the family tree back to the very top, we have to start before the universe was even a concept.
Right, the absolute beginning.
Yeah, the lore states that in the beginning, there was no time, there was no space, there was only a churning vortex of chaos, just absolute unbridled nothingness.
Which is a classic mythological trope.
Exactly. And at the center of this chaotic void, a single egg appeared. And my first thought was just like, where does an egg even come from if reality hasn't been invented yet?
That is the beautiful paradox of the primordial egg motif.
Yeah.
It's a concept that doesn't just exist in this game, it's a foundational element of ancient human creation myths.
Like real-world myths.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Orphic traditions in ancient Greece, or the Vedic texts in India, even the cosmic egg in Chinese mythology with Pangu. They all wrestle with this exact same problem.
How do you get something from nothing?
Exactly. How do you get something from nothing? And the answer is usually a localized singularity of potential. In the Pokemon universe, this singularity is the egg that hatches into Arceus.
Arceus, the alpha Pokemon. The entity that is credited with literally creating the universe with its 1,000 arms.
Right.
But then you look at it and it looks like a glowing white quadrupedal deer caught in a gold wheel. So where does the 1,000 arms thing come from? Does it actually have arms?
No, it's metaphorical. To understand Arceus, you have to look at the real-world theology it draws from.
Yeah.
Our sources draw a very strong parallel here between Arceus and the Zoroastrian deity Ahura Mazda.
Oh, interesting. Ahura Mazda.
Yeah. In Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda is the uncreated creator. He's the entity of pure divine order, representing a concept called Asha, which means truth, order, and existence.
Okay, so total order out of chaos.
Exactly. And this stands in direct opposition to Druj, which is falsehood, chaos, and non-existence. Arceus serves that exact same function. It emerges from the churning void of chaos to establish physical and metaphysical order.
So the arms are just.
The 1,000 arms represent its omnipresent ability to manipulate reality on a fundamental level. It's not literal physical arms.
That makes so much more sense. So Arceus hatches, realizes it's floating in this chaotic void, and decides it needs to impose some order.
It has to build a universe.
Right, but a universe is a massive project. Arceus realizes it can't, or maybe it simply won't manage the day-to-day physics of an infinite cosmos all by itself?
It's too much for one entity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to shape the universe, Arceus delegates. It creates three beings from itself. We call them the creation trio. First you have Dialga, the master of time.
Vital for anything to happen, chronologically.
Exactly. Then you have Palkia, the master of space. But wait, if Arceus represents perfect order, why would its very third creation be Giratina?
Giratina.
Yeah, because we really have to start decoding the dark here. Giratina is the embodiment of antimatter, and the lore says Arceus banished it to the distortion world for being too violent.
That's the in-universe historical record, yeah.
I look at that and think, did Arceus make a mistake? Is Giratina just the evil sibling that got sent to a cosmic timeout in a reverse dimension?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that the Pokemon universe is incredibly mathematically balanced. Nothing is created by mistake at this level of cosmology.
So the violence was intentional.
Not exactly. The concept of decoding the dark is vital here, because human morality labels like evil or violent just doesn't apply to quantum mechanics. Giratina's distortion world isn't just a punitive prison. It acts as a necessary physical stabilizer for the primary universe.
A stabilizer, like the ballast of a ship.
Exactly like the ballast of a ship. Think about the sheer mass and expansion of the universe Dialga and Palkia are generating. Space is expanding infinitely. Time is pushing forward relentlessly.
Sounds like a lot of metaphysical pressure.
It is an immense metaphysical pressure. Without antimatter to balance the matter, the universe would capsize under its own weight. It would literally collapse into a singularity.
Oh, wow. So Giratina is holding it all together.
Yeah. Giratina resides in the distortion world, where time doesn't flow and space is unstable, because it provides the exact counterweight needed to keep our reality upright.
So the banishment was just physics.
Pretty much. It was banished, perhaps because antimatter and matter annihilate each other on contact. It couldn't exist in the same localized plane without destroying the very thing Arceus was trying to build.
That drastically changes how you view Giratina. I mean, it's sitting in the dark, totally out of sight, taking on the burden of stabilizing reality, and history just writes it off as this violent monster.
History is written by the people who don't understand quantum physics, I suppose.
Right. But that actually brings me back to the hook I opened with. We are talking about the creator of reality, the masters of time, space, and antimatter.
The big guns.
The biggest guns. Yet, I can load up a game file right now, walk up to Arceus, and capture it in a metal sphere.
Yeah, the Pokeball problem.
It's a huge problem. How does the cosmological architecture not instantly collapse the moment a 10-year-old shoves the Master of Time into a PC box to rot for eternity?
This is where we have to separate the localized game mechanics from the ontological reality of these beings. There is a verified piece of lore specifically highlighted during an event at the Sinjo Ruins that clarifies this.
Okay, what does the Sinjo Ruins event show?
It shows that the Arceus, the Dialga, the Palkia that humans catch are merely physical avatars. They are localized infinitesimal fragments of a transcendent creator.
Wait, so I'm not catching the entire universe, I'm just catching, like, the finger it dipped into the pond.
Precisely. The true entity of Arceus exists beyond human comprehension, completely outside of space and time.
Oh, that is wild.
Right. The physical form it takes, the white, deer-like creature you mentioned earlier, is just a manifestation it uses to observe or interact with the physical plane.
So when you capture it, you just get the projection.
Exactly. The universe doesn't collapse because the actual cosmic force generating reality is still out there, completely unaffected by the localized capture of its avatar.
And the Sinjo event proves this.
Yeah, the event proves this because Arceus is shown creating a brand new egg of Dialga, Palkia, or Giratina out of thin air, surrounded by real-world photographs of galaxies. It proves the transcendent, truly unlimited nature of the entity.
Okay, so the family tree is rooted. We have the physical framework. Dialga is keeping the timeline flowing. Palkia is making sure three-dimensional space continues to expand. Giratina is sitting in the dark, acting as the structural ballast.
The stage is set.
But, so what? What good is a perfectly stable universe if it's completely empty and silent?
That's the big question.
Stability demands a stage, sure, but physical space isn't enough. Life needs consciousness. A universe without observers is just a dead mechanism.
It's the anthropic principle applied to fantasy cosmology. A universe needs a mind to perceive it, or else its existence is functionally meaningless.
And Arceus understood this.
Yes, which brings us to the next branch of the tree.
Arceus creates the Lake Guardians, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. And our sources note they all hatched from a single egg, which just cements their intrinsic connection.
They are inextricably linked.
Yeah, they represent the spirit of all consciousness. Uxie brings knowledge, Mesprit brings emotion, and Azelf brings willpower. And what I find amazing is that they are deeply based on the imperial regalia of Japan.
Yes, the three sacred treasures. It's a really brilliant mapping of cultural mythology onto the building blocks of sentience.
How so?
Well, Uxie corresponds to the Yata no Kagami, the mirror, which represents wisdom and understanding.
Okay.
Mesprit corresponds to the Yasakani no Bagatama, the jewel, representing benevolence in the spectrum of emotion. And Azelf corresponds to the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the sword, representing valor and the willpower to act.
That's amazing. So they are literally the reason humans and Pokemon can think, feel, and make decisions.
No.
But they aren't just cosmic cheerleaders handing out brain cells, right? They have a massive systemic job in the overarching architecture of reality.
Oh, they absolutely do. They serve as the ultimate cosmic failsafe. Dialga and Palkia wield unimaginable, volatile power.
Right, space and time.
Yeah. And if space and time were ever to clash if the fabric of reality began to tear itself apart, physical force wouldn't be able to stop them. You can't punch a hole in time.
No, a physical attack wouldn't do anything to time itself.
But what you can do is contextualize it. Only the Lake Guardians have the spiritual authority and the power to pacify Dialga and Palkia.
Because mind and spirit are the only concepts that sit above the raw mechanics of space and time. I love that.
It's a very philosophical hierarchy.
It really is. But I have to warn the listeners, do not mistake these three for harmless little fairies. I dug into the Pokédex entries, and the taboos surrounding the Lake Guardians are genuinely terrifying.
They really are.
This isn't a fairy tale, this is cosmic horror.
Interacting with the purest, undiluted forms of consciousness is incredibly dangerous for a mortal mind.
Dangerous is a massive understatement. The lore states that if you look directly into Uxie's eyes, it instantly, irrevocably erases your entire memory.
It's just gone.
You are wiped completely clean. And if you touch Mesprit, it drains you of all emotion within 3 days. You don't die, you just become this hollow, apathetic shell, incapable of feeling joy or sorrow.
A horrifying fate.
And Azelf. If you harm it, it can literally manipulate your willpower to the point of possessing host bodies or rendering you completely immobile forever.
It speaks to the absolute weight of their gifts, you know?
Yeah.
Knowledge, emotion, and willpower are the tools that allow civilization to flourish. But they are volatile.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with them.
If you disrespect the source of wisdom, you lose the capacity for it. If you try to grasp emotion too tightly, it evaporates. It's a philosophical warning embedded in the biology of these creatures. You cannot master the building blocks of your own mind.
So the Lake Guardians are keeping the creators of space and time in check, ensuring reality doesn't tear itself apart. But what good is a stable, conscious universe if everybody is just floating in a vacuum?
You need a place to put everybody.
Exactly. You need a stage. You need localized terrestrial architecture. This cosmic family tree has to put its roots down in actual dirt. But who does the heavy lifting to build a habitable rock?
That requires localized forces of nature, entities designed specifically for planetary engineering.
Enter the Weather Trio, officially known in the lore as the super ancient Pokemon. Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza.
The big three.
I look at these three and I don't see animals. I see the ultimate planetary construction crew. You have Kyogre, this massive, bioluminescent, orca-like creature whose sole biological function is to expand the oceans with torrential, unending rain.
Right.
Then you have Groudon, a heavily armored, magma-veined theropod dinosaur that literally lifts the continental crust from the seafloor via extreme heat and volcanism.
Terraforming on a massive scale.
And holding it all together is Rayquaza, a massive serpentine dragon that cloaks the planet, residing in the ozone layer to synthesize an atmosphere.
The mythological inspirations here are deeply rooted in ancient Abrahamic texts. They are direct analogs to the primeval chaos monsters of the Bible and Jewish eschatology.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Groudon is the behemoth, the unconquerable beast representing the land of the desert. Kyogre is the Leviathan, the master of the deep sea and the primordial waters. And Rayquaza is the Ziz, the mythical griffin-like ruler of the sky.
That maps perfectly.
In those ancient texts, these beasts were said to be so massive that their movements dictated the climate, and at the end of time, they would engage in an apocalyptic battle.
Which is exactly what happens in the Pokemon lore. The problem with the construction crew, where one entity creates the oceans and the other entity creates the land, is that they are playing a zero-sum game for planetary real estate.
There's only so much surface area on a planet.
Exactly. Groudon and Kyogre famously despise each other. The ancient texts describe these apocalyptic, world-ending battles between them, where the crust is splitting open and the oceans are boiling.
Their very existences are in direct thermodynamic opposition. It's not a rivalry, it's physics. Evaporation versus precipitation, the expanding mantle versus the eroding tides.
They just can't exist in the same space.
They cannot coexist peacefully because the expansion of one necessitates the destruction of the other.
And that's where Rayquaza comes in. Rayquaza is the Trio Master. It possesses an innate ability called airlock. When Groudon and Kyogre are turning the planet into an uninhabitable nightmare of lava and tsunamis, Rayquaza descends from the stratosphere.
And just shuts it down.
Its very presence neutralizes all weather, it shuts down the rain, it shuts down the harsh sun, and it forces them into a slumber.
What's fascinating here is how this lore expands when we introduce the concept of the multiverse, specifically the Mega Universe, or MU timeline, that the franchise introduced later on. The stakes of this terrestrial battle are raised exponentially.
Right, because the base forms of Groudon and Kyogre we see are actually in a weakened state, aren't they?
Exactly. In the MU timeline, we learn about primal reversion. By absorbing the sheer natural energy of the planet itself, Groudon and Kyogre reclaim their ancient primordial forms.
And their power levels just go off the charts.
We have to look at the thermodynamics of this. Primal Groudon's body heat is so intense, it creates a localized desolation. Where water mathematically cannot exist, it instantly vaporizes.
It just disappears.
Yeah. And Primal Kyogre generates a primordial sea that creates heavy rain so dense it extinguishes all fire. They aren't just changing the weather, they are overriding the physical rules of their localized environment.
So if they are suddenly powered up, how does the drive of the sky stop them now?
Rayquaza achieves mega evolution. But the mechanics of how it does this are entirely unique in the genealogy of Pokémon. It doesn't use a manufactured megastone.
Wait, let's look at the biology of this. The lore says Rayquaza consumes meteoroids in the stratosphere. But it's not digesting space rocks for calories, right?
No, it's utilizing a specialized biological feature called the Mikado organ.
The Mikado organ.
Think of the Mikado organ as a biological nuclear fusion reactor. Rayquaza consumes meteoroids, and this organ synthesizes the cosmic energy trapped inside those space rocks.
That is insane!
When Rayquaza is exposed to the prayers of humanity or an intense concentration of natural energy, the Mikado organ triggers a self-sustaining energy loop, allowing it to mega-evolve internally. It literally weaponizes the cosmos to overpower the planet's localized tantrums.
That is just awe-inspiring. So Rayquaza forces the land and the sea to go to sleep. The planet is quiet, but it's a mess.
Yeah, the geography is pretty wrecked at this point.
You have these massive tectonic plates that Groudon shoved up to the surface just sitting there randomly. The continents need to be organized. Enter one of my favorite branches of this family tree, the continental giant, Regigigas.
A true titan.
The lore explicitly states this colossal golem-like Pokemon literally towed the continents into place using ropes.
The physical tension required to drag a tectonic plate across a mantle is almost incomprehensible. This isn't magic. This is raw mechanical leverage.
It's just brute strength.
Which is exactly why ancient human civilizations revered Regigigas as a godly being. It was the literal architect of their geography.
But Regigigas didn't just park the continents and go to sleep, it was an artist. Once the continents were in place, it sculpted its own creations, its own localized family tree of titans from various materials it found on the Earth.
And if we analyze those materials, they provide a chronological roadmap of the Earth's anthropological and geological development.
Exactly. Let's break down this crafting process. It made Regirock purely from clay and rocks, which anthropologists in the Pokemon world correlate to the Stone Age.
Makes sense.
Then it took an iceberg that, according to the Pokedex, can never be melted by fire or magma, and sculpted Regis, representing the Ice Age. Then it used hardened magma and an unknown extraterrestrial metal to create Registeel, representing the Iron Age. These were the original three. But more recent explorations uncovered two more.
Yes. The newer discoveries profoundly expanded the timeline.
We found Regieleki, which is made of pure, unadulterated electric energy held together by insulating rings. This clearly represents the modern age, the era of electrification and technology.
And the other one?
And then we have Regidrago, Regidrago represents the Dark Ages, or the Mesozoic era, because its body is composed entirely of crystallized dragon energy. But here's the best part. Regigigas apparently ran out of crystals after making its head. So Regidrago is just this floating, incomplete, terrifying dragon maw.
The craftsmanship of Regigigas is extraordinary, but we really need to look at how the in-game mechanics reflect this massive lore. There was a concept called ludonarrative resonance when the gameplay perfectly mirrors the story.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Regigigas suffers from an ability called slow start.
Oh man, ask any competitive player about slow start. It is the bane of their existence.
It's notoriously frustrating.
When you send Regigigas into battle, its attack and speed stats are instantly halved for the first 5 turns. It makes this godly titan almost completely useless in a fast-paced battle.
But think about what you, as the player, are actually experiencing. You aren't just getting frustrated at a line of code. You are trying to jumpstart a rusted, continent-moving deity that has been frozen in the sub-zero temperatures of Snow Point Temple for millennia.
That's such a cool way to look at it.
It is a brilliant mechanical reflection of its centuries of dormancy. The game is forcing you to feel the weight of its ancient exhaustion. It literally takes time for the joints of a colossal body that pulled tectonic plates to wake up, break the ice, and function at full capacity.
That context changes everything. You're not waiting out a debuff, you're waiting for a god to stretch its legs. Now, while we are talking about the Regis, I want to bring up something that is a massive part of the cultural conversation surrounding this branch of the family tree.
Ah, the fan theory.
There is a very prevalent, very heavy urban legend in Japan connecting the Regis to the World War II atomic bombings.
It's a theory that has circulated in the fandom for nearly 2 decades now.
Right. And to be explicitly clear to you listening, we're reporting this impartially. Game Freak has never confirmed this, and we aren't endorsing this as canon, but the theory is incredibly detailed.
It's worth examining just for the cultural impact.
Definitely. It goes like this. The Hone region map in the game is geographically based on the real-world Kyushu region of Japan, which historically saw heavy airstrikes.
Right.
The original 3 Regis are locked away in specific isolated locations that some fans have mapped directly to the coordinates of these real-world strike zones. They are locked behind braille puzzles, which some fans interpret as representing the blinding effects of the atomic flash.
The theory goes deeper when you look at Regigigas itself.
Yes, it really does. Regigigas is located in Snow Point Temple in the Sino region, which is based on the real-world island of Hokkaido. Some fans match the exact location of Snow Point Temple with real-world monuments of peace, specifically the Soyakaikyo Navy War Memorial, which famously carries the engraved message, "We must not repeat war once more."
It's a very specific connection.
And furthermore, the Regis are the only Pokemon in the game that learn the move Explosion entirely by leveling up, rather than by a technical machine.
It is an incredibly profound, somber theory. And while the creators likely never intended to embed such a direct, heavy, real-world tragedy into a children's game, and they will likely never comment on it, it demonstrates something vital about this universe.
What's that?
It shows how deeply audiences engage with the lore. The fact that players can read themes of pacifism, tragedy, and historical mourning into the geography and mechanical design of these creatures speaks to the immense cultural impact and the atmospheric depth of the franchise.
It elevates them. They aren't just rock monsters you catch to fill out a checklist. They become monuments to human history.
Exactly.
Before we move away from the massive planetary architects and start looking at how life localized itself on the surface, I just want to pause and say, if you are enjoying this deep dive into the true scale of Pokemon mythology, please leave a like and subscribe. Let us know you want us to keep unpacking these massive fictional universes.
We have so much more to cover.
We really do. Okay, so the continents are parked, the weather is stabilized by the big dragons up in the sky, but a planet isn't just one big biome. Localized ecosystems needed their own regional guardians.
We are zooming in from the macro, global scale, down to the regional scale.
Specifically the Johto region, and even more specifically, Akertique City.
Akertique is arguably the cultural and spiritual heart of the Johto region. It's a city steeped in reverence for the balance of nature.
Absolutely. And the skyline of Akertique City was defined by its twin towers, the Bell Tower in the east and the Brass Tower in the west. The Bell Tower was the roost of Ho-Oh, the guardian of the skies, and the Brass Tower was the roost of Lugia, the guardian of the seas.
It was a beautiful setup.
It was a perfect, symmetrical harmony of the sea and the sky residing side by side, watching over humans. But about 150 years before the events of the games, tragedy struck the brass tower. Lightning descended from a freak storm, striking the tower and sparking a massive, uncontrollable fire that engulfed the wooden structure.
A total disaster.
After it burned for 3 days, a sudden torrential downpour extinguished the flames, but the damage was done. In the ashes of the blaze, 3 nameless Pokémon perished.
What's fascinating here is how this event transitions from a localized story of loss into a mythology of divine intervention. Ho-Oh, witnessing this tragedy from the bell tower, descends from the sky and exercises its ultimate power, resurrection.
But when Ho-Oh brings them back to life, they aren't the nameless everyday Pokémon they used to be. Ho-Oh revives them as the legendary beasts, infusing them with the very elemental forces of the disaster that killed them.
It remade them completely.
Yeah. You have Raikou, the saber-toothed tiger, who represents the lightning strike that started it all. You have Entei, the massive lion who represents the raging fire that consumed the tower. And you have Suicune, the graceful wolf who represents the sudden rain that put the fire out.
It's a localized cycle of destruction and rebirth. And this specific event spawned arguably the richest, most debated piece of fan speculation in the entire franchise.
I love this theory so much.
Because the original identities of those 3 nameless Pokémon are never explicitly stated in the games. We are never told what died in the fire.
But the fans looked at the context of Arctic City to figure it out. The city is famous for the Kimono Girls, a group of elite trainers who strictly use the Eevee evolutionary line. Eevee is deeply embedded in the cultural fabric of the city.
Therefore, the prevailing anthropological theory among fans is that those 3 Pokémon trapped in the tower were originally a Jolteon, a Flareon, and a Vaporeon.
It makes perfect sense. Their elemental typings, electric, fire, and water, match perfectly with Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. The hidden abilities of the beasts in later generations even mirrored the standard abilities of the evolutions. Ho-Oh essentially took 3 beloved local pets and elevated them to minor deities.
It's a very touching narrative.
It is. But while Ho-Oh is resurrecting elemental dogs, or cats, the debate continues to rage. What happened to Lugia? Its home, the brass tower, just burned to the ground.
Lugia fled. The lore states it retreated to the Whirl Islands, seeking refuge deep in the ocean trenches. It isolated itself, not just out of grief for the tower, but out of a recognized fear of the sheer destructive potential of its own power.
It was afraid of itself.
Yeah, Lugia's wings are said to pack devastating power. A light fluttering can blow apart regular houses. It chose the depths of the ocean to protect humanity from itself.
And here is a wild, behind-the-scenes fun fact that completely shatters the illusion of this perfectly planned mythology. Lugia wasn't originally meant to be a game Pokemon at all. It didn't exist in the original drafts of Pokemon Gold and Silver. It was created specifically by the late anime writer Takeshi Shudo for the second animated movie, Pokemon 2000. He wanted an oceanic counterpart to the birds. But the movie design was so incredibly popular that Game Freak literally shoehorned Lugia into Pokemon Silver at the 11th hour.
Oh wow, which perfectly explains why Lugia's in-game lore connection to Ho-Oh feels slightly less fleshed out in the original release compared to the deep, historical relationship Ho-Oh shares with the legendary beasts. Lugia was an interloper added to the family tree after the fact.
But despite being a late addition, Lugia retroactively became the trio master of the legendary birds of the Kanto region, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. It's the only entity that can quell their fighting over the ocean currents. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
Even without a direct in-game rivalry or war between them, Lugia and Ho-Oh are perfectly designed foils to one another.
They are the ultimate study in localized duality.
Think about it. Ho-Oh is the sky, Lugia is the sea. Ho-Oh is the mascot of Pokemon Gold, Lugia is silver. Ho-Oh is associated with the sun and bright rainbows. Lugia is associated with the moon and dark ocean trenches. Ho-Oh lives above in the sky on the bell tower. Lugia lives below in the crushing depths of the Whirl Islands. Ho-Oh creates life by resurrecting the beasts. Lugia isolates itself out of fear of destroying life. They are the yin and yang of the entire ecosystem.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it proves the fractal nature of this universe. Arceus created the macro-dualities, time and space, matter and antimatter.
Right.
Down on the planetary surface, Ho-Oh and Lugia mirror that exact same structure as micro-dualities, sky and sea, sun and moon. The architecture of the universe repeats itself at different scales.
Okay, my mind is thoroughly blown by the architecture. We have creator gods in the void, we have regional weather guardians, we have continents moving around, and we have towers burning down. But what about the actual standard biological ancestors?
The everyday creatures.
Right. where does the mundane fit in? How did we get a regular Pikachu or a Charizard or a Pidgey? Did Arceus mold every single Zubat out of clay in a cave?
No, the system becomes organic. Once the environment is stabilized by the macro entities, biology takes over.
And that brings us to Mew. Mew is the genetic common ancestor of all terrestrial Pokémon. Its DNA literally contains the genetic codes of every single species that came after it.
It's a blueprint.
That's why, mechanically in the games, Mew is the only Pokémon that can learn every single technical machine and hidden machine. Every biological mechanism, every elemental breath, every physical adaptation exists in a dormant state within Mew's genome.
If Arceus created the canvas and the Weather Trio built the easel, Mew is the paint. It is the stem cell of the entire franchise.
But bringing up Mew forces us to clarify a massive point of confusion in the fandom. I hear casual fans call Mew a legendary Pokémon all the time, but officially, taxonomically, Mew is a mythical Pokémon.
Ah, yes, the great debate.
What is the actual structural difference in the family tree between a legendary and a mythical? Because to the average player, they both just seem like rare, powerful monsters.
It's a vile distinction, especially since Generation V, when the Pokémon Company drew a strict dividing line in all global media. We've talked extensively about legendaries Dialga, Groudon, Ho-Oh. Notice a pattern.
They're all huge.
Well, yes, but legendaries are active, systemic parts of the world. They are regional guardians, weather balancers, or deities. Crucially, they are embedded in human history.
Okay, I see.
People build temples for them, they write historical texts about them, their existence is known. You, the player, can usually find them by exploring the geography of the world. They are part of the local real estate.
So what makes a mythical different?
Mythical Pokémon are anomalies. They do not typically serve a massive, global, systemic function, like keeping the continents afloat. They are transient, highly localized, or even extra-dimensional beings.
They just kind of show up.
Exactly. They are so incredibly rare that the average person in the Pokémon world severely doubts they even exist. They are the subjects of rumors, not religions. They are the cryptids of this universe. Furthermore, from a mechanical standpoint, historically, you could not catch a mythical just by playing the game.
Right, you had to go to an event.
Yes, they were only available to players via real-world distribution events. You had to physically go to a store or attend a movie to receive the data. They existed outside the boundaries of the programmed map.
Let's run through this mythical roster because I want to challenge this idea of biology. We have Mew, the ancestor of terrestrial life, but then we have Lullaby, the time-traveling guardian of the Ilex forest.
Right.
It's essentially a localized environmental protector that uses time travel to ensure the forest thrives. Then you have Jirachi, this bizarre star-shaped entity that sleeps for 1,000 years at a time, wakes up for a week, and has a third eye on its stomach that absorbs energy to grant wishes.
Very anomalous.
But then we get to Deoxys. How does Deoxys fit into a biological family tree spawned by Mew? The lore explicitly states Deoxys is an extraterrestrial space virus that mutated when it was exposed to a laser beam. It isn't even from this planet.
Which perfectly illustrates the anomaly aspect of mythicals. Deoxys is a profound foil to Mew. Mew represents the perfection of terrestrial evolution, a neat little package of terrestrial DNA.
And Deoxys is just chaos.
Deoxys represents the chaotic, unpredictable nature of the cosmos. It's an extra-dimensional invasive species. It proves that Arceus' universe is vast, and that the planet Groudon and Kyogre built isn't the only rock harboring life.
And speaking of weird biology, we have to talk about Manaphy. Manaphy is the Prince of the Sea, another mythical, but it is completely unique because it is the only mythical Pokémon capable of breeding in captivity.
That's a very strange mechanic.
It is, because if you put Manaphy in a daycare with a Ditto, you don't get another Manaphy. You get an entirely different species called Phione, which is this lesser, weaker sea drifter. And Phione cannot evolve back into Manaphy.
Structurally speaking, it's a fascinating biological dead end. Manaphy can survive in the harsh deep-sea currents, but its offspring, born in the artificial environment of a human daycare, only inherits a fraction of that adaptability.
It's like it needs the ocean to be strong.
It's a regression, highlighting how specific environmental pressures are necessary to maintain legendary traits.
But the environment isn't the only thing applying pressure to this family tree. The most disturbing branches aren't natural at all. We have to talk about the synthetics.
Oh man,
These are Pokémon created entirely by human technological intervention.
a very dark turn in the genealogy.
We have Mewtwo, which is a combat-engineered clone of Mew, created by scientists who spliced Mew's DNA to amplify its psychic powers and stripped away its compassion.
Just made it a weapon.
We have Genesect, which was an ancient apex predator resurrected from a fossil and then cybernetically modified with a literal laser cannon bolted onto its back by Team Plasma. And then we have Type, Null, eventually known as Silvally. This is a chimera built by the Ether Foundation using cells from all known Pokémon types. They basically tried to build a Frankenstein monster specifically designed to fight interdimensional Ultra Beasts, and they put a heavy control mask on it to suppress its volatile power.
It raises a profound question about the nature of creation within the lore.
Honestly, I have to push back here. Do synthetics even belong on the family tree? If Mew is the root of biology, these things feel less like natural descendants and more like unauthorized genetic DLC installed by hackers.
That is exactly why they belong, but they represent a different kind of origin. They represent human hubris. This entire time we've talked about gods. Arceus created the universe. Regigigas created the Titans. Humans, having achieved advanced technological mastery, are now trying to emulate that divine power of creation.
Playing God.
Exactly. Mewtwo is mankind trying to improve upon the biological perfection of Mew. Silvally is mankind quite literally trying to build their own synthetic Arceus. It even possesses an ability that mimics Arceus' ability to change types. They're absolutely part of the tree, but they are branches grafted on unnaturally by human hands, usually resulting in suffering.
Wow. Grafted on unnaturally by human hands.
Oh.
That transition is almost too perfect because it brings us to the final and perhaps most important section of our deep dive. How do humans actually fit into this grand mythological tapestry?
We've talked about everything else.
Right. We've talked about humans building towers, tracking down cryptids, and splicing genes in laboratories. But what was the ancient relationship like before Pokeballs, before the technology? How did humanity interact with these cosmic forces?
To understand the baseline human experience in this world, we have to look past the physical environment and look at the psychological landscape. And the human psychological landscape is governed by the lunar duo.
Right, Cresselia and Darkrai.
Yes, they manage the subconscious realm of dreams.
Cresselia is this beautiful, ethereal, swan-like creature that flies around and brings hope and pleasant dreams, leaving behind glowing lunar feathers. And on the flip side, you have Darkrai, who is essentially a floating shadow entity that inflicts horrific, paralyzing nightmares. It sounds like a classic good versus evil setup.
But the nuance here is crucial, and it echoes the lesson we learned with Giratina. Darkrai isn't inherently malicious. It inflicts nightmares involuntarily.
Oh, it doesn't choose to do it.
No, it's an automatic defense mechanism designed to keep people and other Pokemon away from its territory. Darkrai actively isolates itself on New Moon Island because it knows its presence causes psychic harm. The nightmares are just a tragic byproduct of its existence. It wants to be left alone, but human fear constantly paints it as a demon.
It's the ultimate misunderstood creature. And speaking of misunderstanding, if we really want to grasp how humanity learned to navigate a world filled with psychic shadows and time-controlling dragons, we have to open up the archives of the Canonical Library in the Sinnoh region.
The Canonical Library is arguably the most important location in the franchise for anyone studying the anthropology of the Pokemon world. It contains the Sinnoh folktales.
These texts explain the very early days of the human-Pokemon covenant. Let's look at the tall grass myth. Think about the player experience. You ever wonder why Pokemon constantly jump out of the tall grass to fight you? Why don't they just run away?
It is kind of odd when you think about it as animal behavior.
The ancient text says that originally, humans and Pokemon lived completely separate lives. They didn't interact, but they eventually helped each other to survive. One day, a Pokemon proposed to the others that they should always be ready to help humans. And that is why, to this day, Pokemon deliberately hide in the tall grass. They are waiting to step out and offer their assistance to humans who venture past.
It is a stunning philosophical reframing. It takes the core, sometimes annoying mechanic of the entire franchise, random encounters, and frames it not as wild animal attacks, but as an ancient sacred covenant of mutual aid. They aren't ambushing you, they're volunteering.
But not all the myths are about perfect harmony. There is Veilstone's myth. This is a remarkably dark tale for this universe. It talks about a callow young man who found a sword. He started using it to carelessly slaughter Pokemon for food, taking way more than he needed and discarding whatever he didn't eat.
A huge violation of the natural order.
As a direct result of his gluttony and violence, the Pokémon vanished from the land. A terrible famine struck. When the young man finally tracked down one remaining Pokémon, he asked why they were hiding. The Pokémon essentially told him that his newfound power, the sword, and his violence made him blind to the value of their lives.
What's a classic animistic parable? It's a direct consequence of a human disrespecting the natural balance. When mankind abuses its dominion, nature withdraws its bounty.
So the young man experiences a revelation. He breaks his sword, hurls it to the ground, and permanently renounces violence. The Pokémon forgives him, but it disappears to a place beyond seeing.
This raises an important question regarding the moral framework these myths provided to ancient societies in the game. These aren't just flavor text or fairy tales, they are the ecological commandments of the Pokémon universe. They teach humans respect, restraint, and gratitude. You cannot take more than you need, and you cannot use power to subjugate nature.
Which ties beautifully into Shaman, the mythical Pokémon of gratitude. Shaman's very biological existence relies on the human appreciation of nature. It absorbs gratitude to transform barren, ruined lands into flourishing flower paradises. The ecosystem literally runs on the emotional respect of humanity.
It's all connected.
So what does this all mean? Let's take a deep breath and recap this unbelievable journey. We have traced the ultimate genealogical and cosmological tree. We started in a void of chaos with a single cosmic egg hatching into the thousand-armed creator, Arceus. We saw Arceus delegate the very fabric of reality to the spatial, temporal, and antimatter balancers, Dialga, Palkia, and the structural ballast, Giratina.
The foundational blocks.
We watched the Lake Guardians spark the volatile gifts of consciousness, emotion, and willpower. We saw the raw thermodynamic power of the terrestrial architects Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza shape the planet's crust and atmosphere, while Regigigas physically towed the continents into place and sculpted the epochs of history.
Truly mythological scaling.
We explored the localized guardians like Ho-Oh and Lugia, bringing micro-duality to the ecosystem. And finally, we tracked the biological blueprints of life from Mew through the extra-dimensional anomalies of the mythicals, all the way down to the genetic tampering of human hubris and the ancient covenants of the tall grass.
It is a meticulously, flawlessly designed cosmology. Every single entity, from the gods of time to the spirits of the lakes to the floating shadows of nightmares, has a structural, ecological, or psychological purpose. Nothing exists by accident, except perhaps the things humans tried to build themselves.
Thank you so much for joining us on this massive deep dive. If you loved learning about the hidden, often terrifying depths of the Pokemon universe, please, one last time, drop a like and subscribe. It tells us that you want more explorations of the lore hidden right beneath the surface of the games you love.
We'd really appreciate it.
But I'm not letting you go without leaving you with one final, deeply provocative thought. We mentioned the Canolab library and those ancient texts. There is one text in there specifically titled Sinnoh Folk Story 3.
Oh, this one is wild.
The text states, plainly, that there was once a time when humans and Pokemon ate at the same table, and there were no differences to distinguish the two. Another tale in the library talks about a Pokemon shedding its hide to become human. Think about that massive family tree we just built.
Changes everything.
If Arceus is the absolute root, and Mew is the genetic ancestor of all terrestrial life, and ancient texts claim humans and Pokemon were once entirely indistinguishable, are humans actually just another branch on the Pokemon family tree?
That is the ultimate genealogical mystery. It blurs the line between the trainer and the trained.
We started this deep dive talking about mundane ancestry websites, tracing records back to a farmer in the 1800s. But maybe, in this universe, if you swab your cheek, put it in a tube, and send your DNA to the lab, the results come back pointing straight to a pink, floating cat with the DNA of the universe inside it. Something to think about the next time you throw a Pokeball. See you next time.